Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cloudbusters. We're your hosts, Alex Hullah and Mallory Beaudreau. And this week, we are looking at cloud and technology use in government. Now, when I look at this, I feel like the perception is always government is pretty slow at working with new technology. And when you think of adoption of public cloud, the long-standing assumption has been, government can't use cloud. There's kind of security risks, and it's a whole new way of working. But to help us actually talk through that myth today and understand actually what's really happening, we have our guest.
So we are going to bust this myth today with Lorraine Henderson, the head of client services at BJSS.
Thanks for inviting me along to this interesting session. I'm sure it's going to spark a lot of conversation out there. So just a little bit about BJSS. We're a leading technology company. We work with clients across the public and private sectors to deliver world-class technology solutions. We work with a variety of public sector organisations, and specifically I work within our public sector portfolio. So I work with a number of clients such as Home Office and DVSA, and looking forward to sharing some of the stories of what I've been seeing in those organisations.
Awesome, thank you. So, Lorraine, you may be kind of shaking your head with my kind of initial kind of perception here, but it's kind of what we traditionally have associated with cloud and government tend to not, we don't think of those going together. But what do you see?
Well, Alex, I would have to disagree. In fact, since 2013, the government has had a cloud-first strategy. Since it set up the Government Digital Service, GDS, which is the governing body for all new digital projects, it has been the edict to all public sector organisations that they should deliver on a cloud platform unless they can prove that there's value doing it in a different way.
That's awesome. So we've got over the security concerns and the kind of the other kind of those barriers, and then so what drove that mandate? Is that is it faster delivery? Is it lower cost? What is the thing that's kind of driven that?
I think there was a number of drivers for it. I think for a long time the government has been trying to move away from monolithic outsourced technology contracts. I think the government was witnessing that technology was changing so fast elsewhere, and they just were aware that they needed to be able to keep up with that, in order to, the demands of the consumers of those services were just changing, and the contracts that they had in place just didn't support the needs of the customers, the public, really. So I think the flexibility that they needed and the efficiency and the cost benefit to moving to cloud as well. Most members of the public probably think that government doesn't really think about our needs and how we want to consume their services, whereas in fact the reverse is true. For most of those public facing services, absolutely, there's been a wealth of user research, there's been constant testing of pages, and that user journey is absolutely the forefront of all these government services now. As we were recently involved in a project with DVSA around the digitisation of the practical driving test. So the driving test is a service that probably everyone, most people will go through in their lifetime.
I remember it was terrifying, Lorraine.
I'm sure.
I'm not interested in a UK driver's license. I'll take the two. I'm doing just fine over here with my two legs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's so everyone can relate to that experience of sitting that driving test, and for it's a process that is almost 100 years old, a manual paper-based process. Not only was it successfully delivered within a year, but the actual cost of delivering that in cloud is, the cost of the service is in the hundreds of dollars rather than the thousands of dollars just for the infrastructure, just the thousands of dollars that you might imagine for a more traditional sort of data center based service. So, that project alone has delivered enormous value to not just DVSA, but to the users of that service itself. Candidates now get the result from their driving test within minutes.
What I think is a really interesting challenge with public sector in particular is there's this dichotomy of you need to catch up, right? You're behind the times. Who has paper forms anymore, right? You need to catch up. But at the same time, if it doesn't go right the first time, everybody knows. You can't hide it. And I remember back in the US when the Affordable Care Act passed and you got the like healthcare.gov and it broke. It just was a huge scandal and everyone was embarrassed and it was a big problem. And it was one of those moments where government looked silly. They looked foolish, like they didn't know how to use technology. And I'm hearing that too, as we do this, like, of course, no brainer, move a driving test to electronic. It'll be easier, better experience, faster results, et cetera, et cetera. But you also have to stick the landing the first time, or else you're going to have so many people frustrated about glitchy results or poor experience, or it crashes entirely. Like, you can't fail when you are the entire public sector handling driver's licenses.
By the time you get to actually going live, the success is almost, is 80-90% there really. And, the chance of failure is you've de-risked that delivery really. So the whole process enables that de-risking.
Very true. But actually, Lorraine, you're reminding me about a comment you made just earlier around, it's public money and having the accountability into, how that is spent. It sounds like, we see that visibility challenge quite a lot in public cloud, because all of a sudden you get an awful lot of financial data, an awful lot of usage information. And what did I actually get for that? What did I develop? What service is it supporting? Those types. Is that a challenge you feel they've kind of fully addressed, or is it it's something you think they're still working on? How do they manage that from that from a public accountability perspective? I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing challenge really for any public sector organisation to prove the value of the money they're spending really. I think one of the things that any public sector organisation needs to be mindful of when they're doing this move to cloud. So what we have seen is, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the driver for this is getting out these big monolithic managed service contracts, data centre contracts. And sometimes because of the time available, so a government department might have all the best intentions in the world to sort of transform and deliver a new service that's cloud native and enables you to make the most of the benefits of cloud, but sometimes you just don't have the time, and that can lead into more of a lift and shift of legacy applications. And it's often in those scenarios where you don't get the benefit of cloud, and actually it can end up being more costly. And what we try and encourage any organisation that's kind of looking to move out of their legacy estate into cloud is they have to ensure that they've also got within their strategy a plan to transform or optimise, because the danger is that they'll move to cloud and then that legacy application will sit there for years, and that can be very costly. If you're not taking advantage of things like, serverless and all those great cloud native technologies, then actually the value isn't there for moving to cloud. So that is one of the challenges that we see quite often is what is that next step once you've done that migration? How are you then going to make the most of that investment that you've done by doing the move to cloud? I think the other challenge is the funding model for public sector. So funding is all usually, from what we've seen, on a project by project basis, and also sometimes the way that procurement is done means that you could have different, if you've gone out to different suppliers each time, you're not, there's a danger that the way that they're delivering that service into cloud might be different, and if you don't have the right governance in place internally to ensure that you've got efficiency across your cloud platform, then again, that's where we see some challenges around the cost.
So, Lorraine, the more you talk, the more the challenges that you've listed out, I keep thinking, well, yeah, the enterprise has that problem too. If you just lift it and shift it and walk away, you're arguably going to spend more, arguably, if you don't eventually refactor it, re-architecture, replatform it. The funding model, right? You might want some sort of tools or support or something to help that, or consulting to help the journey. You still need to find budget. And then I started, as you were talking, I challenged myself. I said, okay, name another thing that government does. I'm like, personal identifying information. No, enterprises have to do that too, right? Like enterprises have that same challenge where they have, PII they have to hide. Now, in the case of government, that might be your national insurance number. And in the case of, I don't know, music streaming or movie streaming, that might be my email. It's still my personal identifying information, right? And so just the more we talk, the more I keep thinking, government, enterprise, they're just like us.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But I think in fact, we're probably seeing government departments moving quicker than enterprise. And that's probably because of not the edict, but that's the direction that government is being encouraged to go in that cloud first thing. I think following on from the 2013 cloud first policy, last year, government launched the One Government Cloud Strategy. And what Crown Commercial Services has done is signed MOUs with the large cloud platform providers, Microsoft and Amazon and Google. And these are up to 3-year arrangements that give them discounted pricing on cloud spend. So again, that reinforces that cloud is the direction that government wants to go in. And we're seeing public sector organizations almost adopting cloud quicker than the enterprise, really.
That's interesting, Lorraine. So actually, far be it from it being the government not using cloud at all, it's starting to sound like government departments actually all in on cloud. Do we see them kind of going through those cultural changes as well then? So things like being full on FinOps and DevSecOps and all of the new agile ways of working, and is that also feeding in as part of this change? Absolutely,
yeah. There's the government departments that I work with. They're all on board with agile. They bring in agile coaches. That cultural change is so important, and it's a huge shift for government departments and for the people working in those departments. But there's a huge appetite for it. People are really jumping on this bandwagon and really keen to understand, once they see the potential of these services that are in cloud and how how easy it is to change things. Whereas before you would have sat with a service for 10, 15 years and just live with it because it was so difficult to change. And actually having the flexibility to make changes, if you've got the right platform architecture there, that you can deliver changes to those services on the fly without impacting on the users, then once you open that box and people see the potential, they really want to know how to join.
You can't put it, once the box is open, you can't put it back in there.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of freedom to innovate all of a sudden, which is great.
Yeah, but I guess the challenge there is the cost. So as we know, Alex, the cost doesn't sit within procurement departments anymore. Once you open up those cloud accounts to those eager developers and those people with the great ideas who are really keen to kind of deliver those services, how do you then control that spend?
Well, I'll share a story on that. So a gentleman from the cloud team at the Home Office did a presentation back in early 2020 in the UK FinOps meetup group, which you should join if you're not a member of. And this was back when we could all be in person, which was really nice. Remember those times? Those were great. Anyway.
Boxes, yeah.
Never, Alex. So this gentleman was explaining how Home Office took a proactive approach to cloud financial management. And it was really charming because what they built out was one of those efficiency scales like you see on like your washer and dryer and like refrigerator and all of that, you know, the ABCDE thing. And they gave each team a grade, an efficiency grade based on measurements of cloud efficiency. So were you auto scaling things? Were you using Spot? Were you right sizing your usage, right? All the various markers of a cloud native way of thinking and cloud native way of approaching infrastructure. So it was instantly recognizable. It was fun. And it gamified, but also gave very clear, here are the things you're supposed to do to get a good score. And I loved it. I'd never seen anything kind of that playful in what is typically considered very monolithic and very stodgy of an organization. It just wasn't true at all. Home office was in many ways light years ahead of some of the enterprises that were in that same meetup.
That's fantastic. So you've actually gamified what we're doing, and it's in the view of, you know, using cloud the way it's designed. And there's this lovely side effect that actually means it starts costing us a whole lot less money.
It happened to save money, right? But that wasn't in your face, right? Like it was important, of course, it's public dollars, but that's not, it was like the gamification was a means to an end. So the engineers are seeing the means. They're seeing all of these usage things that they can control because they're the ones spinning resources up.
Yeah, and does that encourage? Did he say that encouraged kind of almost a little bit of competition with those teams? Because certainly I see it on our side. You know, with the services that we're supporting, you know, there's always a little bit of competition there as to like how cheap can we make this service this month? And,
absolutely right. I mean, of course, you put a grade on something, and all of a sudden your A's are, you know, chest puffed up. But you have to be careful because what gets measured gets improved. Right. And so you have to make sure that you're measuring the right things. Otherwise, you're creating the wrong incentive. Right. This is not unique to government. Of course, this is any sort of organizational dynamics and change management. So they had to be very clear on what could those people control and still get the desired results of better cost efficiency.
Yeah. And one of the things that we try and work with our customers is almost, you know, how do you measure the value that you're getting from your service, and what are the metrics that will show that it's expensive or it's not expensive? You know, what measures are you using to track that? So we like to look at price per unit, but what is that unit? So to the DVSA, for example, one of the units is the cost of delivering an MOT. So what is the cost for delivering an MOT? And we know what it used to cost when it was in a data center, and we know what it costs now to deliver it on a cloud platform. And you know, it's a fraction of the price. But it's what is that unit that makes sense from a business perspective? So it's not CPU and the cost of CPU or the cost of a EC2. Right. You know, they mean things to us, you know, who are working in that cloud space. But how do you know, what is that metric that's really going to make sense from a business perspective? So, and we're really keen to work with all our customers to identify what is that unit that it makes sense to measure, and then how do we track that, you know, and how do we get the most efficient cloud platform to deliver that benefit.
I'm impressed you have that information from the data center, right? Like Alex and I love talking about, you know, unit economics and, you know, make your cloud work for your business. But having that type of quality in the data center, like I was stunned just now. Like that is such a powerful amount of information to have to really show the results of like cost per driving test, for example. Like just having access to that allows you to show the progress that you're making. And maybe that's one of the benefits of you have to cross your T's and dot your I's in government. So maybe it will take longer to get started, but the quality of what you're doing will be stronger as a result.
Yeah. And again, that's, you know, I hark back to GDS, but one of the things that GDS enforces is performance analytics. So being able to measure those services and it's a fundamental part of when you're delivering a service, you need to be able to look at those performance metrics and using things like Google Analytics to see where you know, how many users you've got, what are they doing, how quick is that user journey? You know, how can we simplify it? And you have to think about those things from the outset of designing your services. So you have to have the data there to be able to measure those things. And that's another benefit of cloud, you know, what it's opened up in terms of data and being able to get that kind of visibility. You know, previously they wouldn't have had any clue as to, you know, how long it took someone to pass through that maybe that driving test process, or, you know, that online, you know, you're booking your driving test online. How long does that take? What's the average user journey? And all that information now has opened up with the use of cloud.
I love that idea as well, that you're starting your business case with what is the unit economic KPI that I'm going to measure to tell me whether this has been a good or a bad migration, or, you know, or re-engineering. That's fantastic. Sorry, Mallory.
Well, that's kind of the tenet of the Agile methodology, right? Is, you know, we're going to do a set of qualified learning to validate the assumptions. And in government's case, they say, well, we're trying to improve X, so that's what we need to measure. And that's how we will know if we have achieved it and succeeded. Like, well, that's you're just pulling a playbook right out of Agile right there.
So Lorraine, it actually sounds like government's investing quite a lot in actually kind of the people and process change that goes along with working in public cloud.
Absolutely right, Alex. And I think that's reinforced by some recent senior appointments in government. We recently saw the appointment of Loveday Ryder as the new CEO at DVSA. She comes from previously being a CEO at a digital technology company that was working with DWP. And also we've seen the appointment at HMRC of a cloud strategy director. So I think the fact that these appointments have been made just show how serious government is about cloud and that digital transformation.
Lorraine, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. I learned a lot today. I think the unit economics part was the one that shocked me the most, and I'm going to take away from it. Alex, what stood out the most to you?
I mean, I think we've thoroughly dispelled the myth that government does not use public cloud, but far from it. It sounds like we are all in. And weirdly enough, it's the same challenge we see with, you know, with enterprises, you know, and small, you know, and cloud natives as well. We wrestle with the same problems around kind of the effective visibility and accountability, but also that unit economics. That definitely, Mallory, that's a great KPI. I'd love to see that more. I think it's fantastic.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me along.
No worries. I guess all remains to say is that thank you very much, Mallory. Thank you very much, Lorraine, for joining us today for Cloudbusters. I hope you enjoyed our session today, team. If you have your own kind of cloud myth or your own cloud question or a challenge you're experiencing in your organization that you'd like us to look into, please reach out to us on the Cloudbusters community at LinkedIn. You can simply search for Cloudbusters, or you can also reach us at cloudbusters@aptio.com. We look forward to seeing you all very soon. I almost forgot, Mallory. I almost forgot. How could I do?
I was going to remind you. Don't worry.
Yeah. You know, we had a great Hat of the Week last week, kicking us off with our Cloudbusters series for your sleuthing hat. But I'm assuming you don't have a government hat, or do you?
Well, I had to put my thinking cap on to pick the right hat for that. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So this hat, here's the thought process that led me to this hat. I thought everyone thinks that government's really antiquated with technology, right? They're all old timey, you know, with their, you know, big mustaches and tweed and canes and monocles. But the reality is that in a lot of ways, government is doing kind of bleeding edge in the things that are the future of cloud and cloud services and infrastructure. So what happens when you combine old timey with future? You get steampunk. And I have chosen my steampunk hat.
Oh, wow.
That is a good hat.
That is the great metaphor there. I like it.
It took me a bit, but I got there. So thank you everyone for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode.